Can you speak?
I'm speaking,
Okay, okay,
saying
okay.
words.
Excellent connection. Let me open up my Kindle application. Where the freak did we leave off? So far back from where I was reading. So much fucking happens in this book. It's actually crazy. I forgot everything that happened, and maybe that's because so much happened.
Yeah, clear.
Oh, fuck, dude. What chapter is this? What chapter does that happen?
Oh my
Chapter
god.
chapter 114. I'm not ready. I'm not ready.
I think we're on like
I
109
know.
or
We're
something.
like some yeah. I'm just saying I
Oh
was reading
god.
ahead and I'm not
I
ready for that
hate you.
chapter.
How far were you reading
I
ahead?
was
What's
reading
wrong
like
with you?
a few chapters ahead.
Why don't you do something
One of the
else?
chapters was really long.
Okay. What's that got to do with me?
Okay. It was not this one.
Like
It's like
we
this
saw
one. Yeah,
our
it's
Shayla.
109, I think. Yep. All right, so what happened?
Um,
I sent you 8 billion arts of it, of
I know. I
the
don't
main part.
know.
They're in the royal
I did
capital.
not look at those yet. 'Cause you
Okay.
sent so fucking many. I
They're in the royal capital.
they're
What are they
yeah,
doing
they're
there?
looking for people so that they could help,
Dude, your frog and toad shirt. Sorry, I got distracted.
so
I
they
love
can
them.
help deal with these evil spirits.
Mm-hmm.
And they were asking around these like homeless people, and they were like, "Hell no, we're not getting paid." So they have to be willing to do it. And then out of nowhere comes Shi Ching Tuen.
Yep.
I don't know how to.
Shi
Yeah.
Ching Xuan.
And he has like a broken arm and a leg,
Yep.
but he's like, "Yeah, I'll do it." And then,
He's got a broken arm and a leg. He's got fleas in his hair. He's all dirty and ratty.
right,
And he's helping
right,
these people. And then he's
and
like,
he's
I'll help you.
and so everyone else is like, "Well, if you're going to do it, then we'll do it," because they love him,
Yeah. And
which is
then,
great.
yeah, they'll do it because you're friends. And then they offer them like free chicken even if
Yeah,
they
yeah,
don't help.
free
So then they round
food.
up like 200 people and then they take them to the main pavilion of the royal capital.
Yes.
That's about what happens. And we found out that Xi Jinping He took Xi Jinping to the royal capital, where Xi Jinping always used to talk to him about how he wanted to go there to get drinks. And he left them there, and then something happened. Xi Jinping was apparently mad and raving about being a god, and he hurt his arm and his leg himself.
Yeah.
It wasn't He Xuan who did that to him. All right, so that ends. Right, they're setting up this array to contain these spirits. So that ends. Those creatures won't be able to break into the royal capital as long as we hold hands like this? Shi Qingchuan asked. No, Shilian said. They'll get in sooner or later. Shi Qingchuan was confused. Then what's the use of this array of yours? It's a trap, Shilian explained. Once they break through the protective barrier of the royal capital, as long as we have this array set up, the creatures won't run amok through the city. Instead, they'll be lured to this circle, and then we'll have them. Chapter 109. 2 simple lines. Ghost King excites the battle spirit. And what happens after we ambush them? Shi Qingchuan asked. Shilian and Hua Cheng had already positioned themselves at the center of the human array. After that, just leave it to us. We'll be here inside the array to take care of them, and we'll make sure we don't spare a single one. All we need is time. The most important thing is that we ensure they don't scatter. Before, I said there might be danger because we don't have a full 500 people, so it's hard to say whether the circle will hold and prevent the creatures from breaking loose. Someone swallowed hard and asked, What will happen if they break out of the circle? It won't be pretty, Shilian replied. The vengeful spirits will possess you, and you'll be the first to catch the plague. If I'm just saying if, someone lets go and runs away, what would happen? If the circle is broken, the vengeful spirits might possess the runner as well, Shilian said. So the spirits will possess them either way. The smarter folks understood and explained. It's different. The former is a guarantee that the spirits will possess and infect you. The latter is a maybe, meaning there might still be a chance for survival if you were to let go and run away. That's it exactly, Shilian said. So does anyone want to leave? You absolutely cannot back out once things begin, but it won't matter who leaves before we start. I hope no one will say anything to those who decide to do so. This is a dangerous task, after all. It was something that had to be said. Otherwise, they wouldn't truly have a group made only of people brimming with courage and determination. Sure enough, the circle shrank a little a moment later, as a dozen few backed out, leaving hurriedly one after the other with their heads bowed. Thank goodness, Shilian sighed, a breath of relief. How's that good? Shi Qingchuan exclaimed. We've got fewer people now. Shilian smiled. There are plenty of people here. This is better than I had imagined. He had been solemnly deliberating what should be done if half their number left, but they'd only lost a few dozen. It was a welcome surprise. A voice could suddenly be heard in the distance. Hold it! Do you know who those people are? You can't trust them so easily. Careful not to get yourselves murdered. Shilian looked back and saw that it was Heaven's Eye in company. And who the heck are you people? Shi Qingchuan groused. Don't add to the problem if you're not planning to help. I promise none of them will harm a soul. Of course, the band of spiritual masters cared nothing for the words of a filthy, unkept beggar. And who the heck are you? How many pennies do your words cost? When Shi Qingchuan heard them insult him like that, his anger rolled up. He pointed at his own face. Ha! You're going on about money in front of me? I don't think you know who you're talking to. I bet you've even prostrated before this... He trailed off and then shrank back, coughing. The band of spiritual masters assumed that he couldn't keep bluffing anymore and retreated of his own accord, so they stopped caring. Instead, they urged the crowd, None of you know what those two are planning. You risk losing your lives for a small bite to eat. Shilian was about to explain that the beggars were there to help for friendship and justice, not a free meal. But before he could, Hua Cheng spoke languidly. That's not true. They're not here for food. They're here to save the world. Shilian was a little puzzled. Why would Hua Cheng tell them that? However, the masters scoffed. What? Save the world? What kind of blind fuss are you trying to kick up? Just worry about yourselves. Yeah, there's no need for a bunch of beggars to get involved. Go away and stop adding to the trouble. Oh? So you mean to say that beggars can't save the world? Hua Cheng retorted idly. Is it because they don't have the ability, or because they're not worthy? The beggars immediately grew rowdy at this, extreme displeasure coloring their expressions. That's not what we said, Heaven's Eye exclaimed angrily. Shi Qingxuan poked his head out again and pointed at him. Hey, hey, hey! I heard it myself! Isn't that exactly what you meant? And you sounded so scornful, too. Right, everyone? Yeah, what did you mean by that? How are we not worthy? They'll feed us whether we help or not. Do you really think we came here for food? Stop looking down on us. Shilian turned to look at Hua Cheng, who arched his brows at him, with a look that said, that was child's play. So that was why he said it, Shilian thought. Although plenty of people had remained in the circle, they weren't particularly determined. So when Heaven's Eye and company had unintentionally shown their disdain, all but saying, filthy beggars like you are useless in such matters, Hua Cheng seized upon it and magnified it to incite the beggars' rebellious spirits. You think you're useless? Now we're dead set on proving what we've got what it takes, too. Their battle spirits surged. Both sides were yelling at each other, and Shilian addressed Heaven's Eye and his entourage. If you're really worried, you can stand by and watch. That way you can easily stop us if we do anything bad. Next to him, Hua Cheng added, but be sure you don't get in the way, okay? This band of spiritual masters had trailed Shilian and Hua Cheng the entire time, and finally mustered the courage to jump out and take action. But Hua Cheng's frightening, fake smile quickly terrified them into submission. Hua Cheng turned back to Shilian. Gaga, look at the sky. Shilian looked up with him. The black shadows in front of the full moon were now more distinct, as if they had quietly snuck closer. While Shilian spent time seeking help, the black night crept along, and now the creatures were on the verge of descending. Oh no, Shilian thought, his heart lurching. We're out of time to find more people. But he didn't allow this to show on his face, as he urgently cried, Everyone, get in position! Hold on tight! Shi Qingxuan was already standing at attention. Your height, old Shi, we don't have very many people. Won't the spirits break through quickly? He'd avoided Shilian's title at the last second, since using it might have caused confusion and unnecessary trouble. This was the mortal realm, after all. I will stand guard here and keep a constant watch, and I'll reinforce any spot on the array that risks being breached, Shilian replied. That will buy us some time. Basically, he would fix the leaks as they appeared. Let me drink. Why are you touching me?
Stretching.
Okay. Well, then our lives are in your hands, including mine, your high, old Shi Qingxuan replied. You gotta work hard, all right? Work very hard. I'm immortal right now. All right, old Feng, I'll give it my all. Everyone's palms were sweaty, and everyone's faces were tense. Don't say it. Just after they all tightly clutched each other's hands, shrieks rang out in the silent night sky. The noises came closer and closer, faster and faster. They had come. Seizing the right timing, Shilian instructed, Everyone, blow air forward. The people didn't understand, but they followed directions. They each filled their cheeks and started blowing with all their might. The large crowd puffed out a circle of hot white mist in the middle of the winter's night. Although their breaths didn't travel far, the warm air mixed with yang energy would be confusing to any spirit who saw it. In addition, Hua Cheng had secretly cast a camouflage spell to stop the creatures from seeing what was happening down below. The vengeful spirits had intended to scatter and run amok, but they sensed an area that was particularly heavy with heat and the energy of the living, rippling and undulating and incredibly lively. Naturally, they assumed it was their target, and excitedly rushed over in a raging black pillar. In an instant, Shilian's field of vision was almost completely blocked. Everyone, be careful not to loosen your hold. They've come into the cage, he cried out. At the same moment, thousands of silver butterflies emerged from behind Hua Cheng and spread out. Haunting silver light illuminated the area, and the black fog before Shilian's eyes was dispersed. He saw Hua Cheng extend a hand towards him. Gaga, come to my side. Shilian was slightly startled, but still took his hand immediately. With a light tug, Hua Cheng easily pulled Shilian over to him, and wrapped an arm around his waist, as he swept the area with a composed glare. Even though the vengeful spirits had lost their minds during their 2,000-year imprisonment inside the kiln, They still didn't dare to go near Hua Cheng. There was not even a hint of their dark aura within a 3-meter radius of the pair. It was only then that the vengeful spirits, who had so gleefully dropped into the circle, noticed something amiss. They had been tearing around and chomping down, but why hadn't they torn into any living humans, instead mangling each other? There were also 2 beings they couldn't even touch, and those silver butterflies were like sharp blades and showers of arrows. Their flapping wings assaulted and slaughtered the vengeful spirits, sending their screams shooting towards the skies. The vengeful spirits finally realized they'd been trapped. They were like savage, imprisoned beasts, locked within with fires raging all around. But the 200-some people weren't the audience outside their cage. They were the iron bars. Beyond outrage, the vengeful spirits screeched violently and savagely at the beggars who were blocking their rampage with nothing but joined hands. They opened their mouths so wide that it looked like they were about to devour the beggars' heads. Their hair bristled with fury, and their faces and bodies twisted into miserable contortions. Some of the beggars were frightened enough to back up a few steps, but they were quickly stopped by those next to them. "Don't move!" "Don't move," Shilian echoed. "They can't hurt you, as long as the array is intact." That reassured the crowd a little. Some beggars even spat wildly at the shrieking, vengeful spirits, jeering as they did. "I'll dirty you! I'll dirty you! Get the hell out of here!" They had probably heard from somewhere that the ghosts were afraid of filthy things. Shilian didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "You don't need to do that either. They're not scared of that." Just then he noticed a spot in the human array was about to fall apart, a weak point about to spring a leak. He hastily looked over and saw a scrawny little beggar, whose bulging eyes were unfocused, his breathing harsh. He looked so scared that it seemed like he was about to start convulsing. Many of the vengeful spirits also noticed that the man's spirit was weakening, and they swarmed towards him. Shilian rushed over and whipped with his silk band, and the vengeful spirits howled as they were struck apart. Shilian quickly made the man back out of the circle, ordering the people on his left and right to connect their hands instead. Before he had the time to breathe in relief, another leak appeared about 18 meters to the southwest, and just as Shilian was about to rush over, he discovered that another leak had sprung farther away, from the person right next to Shi Qingquan. There were countless vengeful spirits, after all, and this was only the first wave. The stream of spirits was practically endless. He couldn't make it in time. Shilian cried, "San Lang!" Hua Cheng didn't move. "Gaga, don't worry." Shilian refused to believe Hua Cheng didn't notice, and he refused to believe that Hua Cheng would ignore such a dire situation. But that hole was about to be exploited by the vengeful spirits. Right at that critical moment, however, a yellow talisman came flying and exploded beside Shi Qingquan. Although the talisman didn't hit any vengeful spirits, it did make them recoil in alarm. It had been thrown by someone from the band of spiritual masters, who had been spying on them all this time. "I told you not to get involved," they yelled as they rushed over. "But since you did, stand your ground to the end. If you can't, you're adding to the trouble." Hua Cheng turned to Shilian, forever at ease. "See? I told you not to worry." Shilian answered. In the end, Heaven's Eye and the other's masters couldn't bear to stand by and watch, and came charging over. They were indeed professional martial artists, and they moved quickly and agilely. They each grabbed 2 people to separate their hands and bridge themselves in. Dozens and dozens of newcomers assimilated into the circle, expanding the human array. "Fellow colleagues, quick, quick, quick! Whoever has schools or disciples here in the capital, tell them to come quickly," Heaven's Eye called out. "Go, go, go!" "I'll call my disciple over too." Soon another 100-some people came barreling down the street, and they were all impressive. Monks, cultivators, spellcasters. Each was fully geared up and took 2 steps as one. Their heroic demeanor was refreshing to see. Shilian cheered loudly in his head while the beggars stared with wide eyes and dropped jaws. This new wave of people was stunned by the extraordinary sight before them, a raging pillar roiling with a peculiar aura. However, they joined in without hesitation. Once they assimilated, the circle expanded even more. The royal capital's main avenue was going to run out of room. And on top of the newcomers' bravery, they were also packing all sorts of spiritual devices that would no doubt greatly extend the time the array could hold. Seeing this bolstered Shilian's confidence, he called out with calm assurance, "Everyone, don't be afraid. The tables are turning. We've got more and more people on our side. As long as we hold the line, we will destroy them. It's only a matter of time. The crowd could also see the situation was turning in their favor. Hope made everything easier. In an instant, everyone's confidence grew. "Destroy them!" cried the crowd enthusiastically. From his side of the circle, Heaven's Eye said, "We've got 168 people on our side. How many do you have? How long do you think we can last?" The leader of the beggars, Shi Qingxuan, counted and recounted before he answered loudly, "We've got 148 remaining in the array." "That's 316 altogether," Shilian said. "We just need to find—" "That's not right," Hua Cheng interrupted. Shilian turned to him. "What's not right?" Hua Cheng's solemn gaze returned to Shilian. "The count isn't right. There are 317 people here." Let me keep reading.
Okay.
Hold on.
I thought that was what you said, and I was like, what? It's like, Hua Cheng, what do you mean?
Chapter 110. Seeking affection, the Ghost King fakes displeasure. Shilian was silent for a long moment. Although Hua Cheng had only swept a glance over the crowd, Shilian wholeheartedly trusted that he hadn't counted wrong. He had spoken in a hushed voice, so no one could have overheard. Shilian also swiftly scanned the circle. Everyone was holding hands, so when did an extra person join in? Could Shi Qingxuan have counted wrong? "Are you sure you've got the right number? You didn't miss anyone," Shilian asked him. Who was saying this? Oh. "Nope. Didn't you say head count is important? I've been keeping count all this time. Even deducted the ones who left halfway through. There's exactly 148 of us," Shi Qingxuan confidently confirmed. "What is it? Is something wrong?" It wouldn't be good to explain right then. Doing so recklessly would only start an unnecessary panic. Shilian couldn't have people point out anyone they didn't recognize either, as there were too many people present, and most didn't know each other in the first place. Thus, Shilian replied, "No, I'm just verifying." It was even less likely that the spiritual masters miscounted. Everyone had reported the head count of their own group to Heaven's Eye, and he added them all together. There was no way they didn't know exactly how many had come from their schools. "When did an extra person join us? What are they planning?" Shilian whispered. "They either snuck in at the start or mixed in when the spiritual masters joined. But they are human for certain. At least it definitely wasn't a ghost. Everyone in the circle had to be a living human, otherwise they wouldn't be able to restrain the vengeful spirits. The mystery person mustn't have wanted to be exposed yet. Since they were already part of the circle, the entire array would collapse if they let go without warning and left a hole. But the array remained stable, which meant they were keeping to their role as an iron bar properly. Consequently, there was even more reason for Shilian to act with caution. If the person realized that their presence had been discovered, they might flee. It also meant it would be quite difficult to find the person without attracting their notice, and pick them out without disrupting the circle. It didn't take long for Shilian to come up with an idea, though, and he turned to Hua Cheng. "Sanlang, can you make your wraith butterflies chase the vengeful spirits without killing them? I mean, could they herd the spirits in a particular direction?" Hua Cheng immediately understood what he wanted to do. "Yes, I can." Since the person had joined of their own volition, they were likely no simple character. They had no fear of the vengeful spirits. If Hua Cheng ordered the wraith butterflies to herd the vengeful spirits to the edges of the circle, the spirits would surely attempt to escape by searching for leaks. Almost any mortal could become a crack in the array, but one person would not, the one who had joined willingly. "But this plan is risky," Shilian said. "We might accidentally scare the others into letting go. We'd be shooting ourselves in the foot." "Don't worry," Hua Cheng said. "I'll kill the vengeful spirits before that happens." The two formulated their plan, then Shilian raised his voice to speak to the crowd. "Everyone, watch out! The vengeful spirits have grown stronger. Just hold on and don't be scared." "What? Why would they get stronger all of a sudden?" Heaven's Eye exclaimed. Hua Cheng didn't move from his spot, but the wraith butterflies started chasing the foul mass of vengeful spirits, sending them scrambling away in a chaotic flurry. The beggars couldn't tell what was going on, but the spiritual masters noticed something was amiss. Heaven's Eye was outraged. "Hua Cheng Zhu, what are you doing?" The two inside the circle had no time to mind him. They intently watched the pursuit. Sure enough, amidst the scrambling current of black smog that filled the air, there was one person the vengeful spirits didn't even try to approach. The area before him was conspicuously empty. That was their man. Schlian darted forward and grabbed the man's hands, at the same time bridging the hands of the two on either side, then plucking him out of the array. Heaven's Eye and his party were growing restless. "What's going on?" "It's none of your business," Hua Cheng answered brusquely. He was already at Shilian's side the moment he finished his statement, guarding him in case the mysterious man tried anything funny. Shilian restrained the man firmly and twisted him around. When he came face to face with the man, Shilian's eyes grew wide. The question, "Who are you?" died in his throat. "State Preceptor. It really was you," Shilian mumbled as he stared at that face. The man was shocked as well, and it took him a moment to mumble, "Your Highness?" His face should have been incredibly familiar, but instead it was incredibly foreign. The State Preceptor was older than 30 in Shilian's memories, and had a rather poised disposition. He could fool anyone with a sweep of his sleeves and his aloof air. However, the man before him now looked not much older than he did, perhaps only 25 or 26. Even though Shilian had heard his voice inside the mountain spirit's body at Mount Tonglu, he'd been wondering since then whether he'd been mistaken, despite also thinking that the Emperor wasn't mistaken when he said, "Your master is no ordinary character. If you do encounter him, be extremely careful." Either way, there was no doubt that the man before him was his master, the last State Preceptor of Shenle, Mei Nianqing. The three of them stared at each other. The air inside the circle of 300-some people seemed frozen. Let me drink. When Mei Nianqing finally snapped out of it, he did something unexpected. While Shilian was still stunned, his master lunged forward to seize his throat with both hands. But Hua Cheng was standing right next to them. How could he possibly allow Mei Nianqing to succeed? Hua Cheng barely moved, but Mei Nianqing was flung over a dozen meters away. The sudden commotion surprised everyone holding hands in the circle. "Why did they start fighting? What's going on? Who are they hitting?" "Gaga, are you all right?" Hua Cheng exclaimed. "I'm fine," Shilian replied. In fact, it was the State Preceptor who didn't look fine. Mei Nianqing coughed up blood from the blow and crawled to his feet before stumbling away, trying to escape the circle. When Shi Qingxuan saw the man running towards him, he cried out anxiously, "What are you up to? Hey, I'm warning you! Don't you dare come over here! Your Highness, he's trying to break the circle!" "Return!" Shilian shouted. Roye answered his command and shot forth. However, before it could wrap itself around Mei Nianqing, a sword plunged from the sky and pierced the ground before the State Preceptor, blocking his way. White light flashed from the sky, shooting down in bright rays. Heralded by that shining curtain, a martial god clad in white armor descended from the heavens. Mei Nianqing's path of retreat had been fully sealed. Blocked both in front and from behind, Mei Nianqing had nowhere else to run. When he whirled around, he came face to face with Roye, who seemed to dance in mad joy as it bound him tightly and tripped him to the ground. Shilian took a step forward. "My lord? Why have you come here personally?" Zhenwu rose to his feet, his expression solemn. "Mount Tonglu has been temporarily stabilized. I came to see how things were going on your end." "How did you manage to stabilize it?" Shilian asked. "I created a new barrier," Zhenwu replied. "The mountain spirits and other human creatures have been temporarily trapped." But Shilian didn't care about the mountain spirits or other related minions. "And wait, no face." Zhenwu shook his head slowly. "I did not find him at Mount Tonglu. I am afraid he has long since escaped elsewhere." Shilian looked at the screen of blinding light that surrounded them and separated them from the 300-some people holding hands. The mortals outside the screen could not see what was going on within. He then looked down at the State Preceptor, who had rolled around to face Zhenwu. Mei Nianqing likely remembered the vicious fight the two had in the past. He looked both shocked and furious, but wisely remained silent even as he raged inside. Zhenwu inclined his head, watching him commandingly from above. "Long time no see, State Preceptor of Shenle," he commented languidly. Looking nonchalant, Hua Cheng approached and gave Mei Nanqing a brief look. The state preceptor looked pretty weak. How did he manage to escape back then? It was not by his own strength, Xunwu said. There were 3 helpers at his side at the time. The deputy state preceptors of Shenle. Shilian couldn't hold back any longer. State preceptor, who are you exactly? Mei Nanqing watched Xunwu with a dark expression, his hands clenched into tight fists with veins bulging on the back. It was hard to tell whether he was furious that Xunwu had ruined his plans or that Shilian had exposed him. He paused for a moment before speaking under his breath. Haven't you already guessed, Your Highness? He was one of the 4 guardians of the Crown Prince of Wu Yang. And the Crown Prince of Wu Yang? Shilian pressed. Is he White No-Face? Xunwu was taken aback when he heard this. Shenle, Xunwu asked. Who is the Crown Prince of Wu Yang? Only then did Shilian remember he hadn't had the chance to report to Xunwu about Wu Yang. Having finally captured the state preceptor, Shilian had many things to report and many questions to ask, but none of that business could be conducted here. My lord, let's talk when we return to the upper court. That may be best, Xunwu said. He hummed for a moment, then added, However, most of the vengeful spirits from Mount Tonglu were sent here to the royal capital, and they will not be suppressed quickly. It will take at least 7 days and 7 nights to do so, even if I am the one performing the purification. Would he have to wait 7 days to interrogate the state preceptor? It would be far too late at that point. White No-Face was still at large. Shilian was contemplating what to do when Hua Cheng spoke up. Leave the mess here to me. You can go wherever you will. Shilian turned his gaze on him, but Hua Cheng had already guessed what he was going to say next. There's no need to say anything else. I'll wait for you down here. If Gaga really wants to thank me, just return to me quickly when you're done. Will that be all right? Xunwu said. Shilian broke into a wide smile. Yes. A silhouette flickered outside the screen of light, and someone came charging in from outside, hobbling and hopping and shouting. Your Highness! Your Highness! What are you doing in here? Is everything all right? It was Shi Qingxuan. When Xunwu had descended and pulled the screen of light around them, no one outside knew what was happening, and they were all scared to death. Shi Qingxuan had bravely stepped up and charged inside to see what was going on. If anyone else had tried, they might have been blocked. But he had worked as a heavenly official, so the screen of light recognized him and allowed him to enter. As soon as he made it inside, he froze in shock. My lord, why did you come here personally? When Xunwu saw him, he gave a light smile. Lord Windmaster, how have you been? Shi Qingxuan was hesitant, shy, and rather embarrassed. After all, by now there was no way Xunwu didn't know the whole sordid affair with Shi Wudu, how it had altered his younger brother's fate and sent him to the heavens. The story had surely spread and caused a riot. Now that he was face to face with his former boss, Shi Qingxuan's mind was consumed by shame and guilt. However, Xunwu didn't mention the topic at all, and treated him with utmost courtesy and full respect. Shilian withdrew Royer, and Mei Nanqing slowly rose to his feet on his own. After Shi Qingxuan was done being shy, he asked, puzzled, Who's this? What's happening right now? Mei Nanqing glanced at him. You're Shi Qingxuan, aren't you? And who are you? Shi Qingxuan replied in surprise. How do you know my name? But a more important question would be, how did Mei Nanqing manage to recognize him as he looked now? Mei Nanqing scoffed. Your name's terrible. Huh? Shi Qingxuan was baffled. However, Mei Nanqing didn't say another word. He willingly followed Xunwu, seeming fairly obedient, probably because he knew that without any helpers at his side, there was no way he'd escape from Xunwu's grasp, even unbound. Shenle, I will bring him to the heavens, Xunwu said. Will you be joining us shortly? Yes, Shilian replied. Xunwu nodded at him. Then he departed with his prisoner. Shilian turned to Hua Cheng, but before he could say anything, Hua Cheng spoke. Gaga, you don't have to worry. It's only a matter of looking after the circle and making sure they don't mess up. It's not hard. Shi Qingxuan chimed in. Your Highness, you're going to head up? Go, go. I'll keep an eye on things too. Don't worry. Shilian nodded. Thank you both for your hard work. In the past, Hua Cheng would have likely replied with, It's nothing, or some other modest niceties. Yet this time, unexpectedly, he hugged his arms and sighed. It is rather hard work. Shilian sensed he was hinting at something. Meanwhile, Shi Qingchuan sensed nothing, and he said excitedly, Yeah, remember to reward us for our hard work afterwards. How about throwing a feast at the royal capital's best restaurant? Ha ha ha. Shi Qingchuan still couldn't forget about feasting at the city's finest establishment. Shilian thought, Lord Windmaster, please stop talking. That wasn't what he meant at all. Hua Cheng shook his head. He quirked his eyebrows and absently played with the red coral pearl tied at the end of his small braid. It would be fine if Gaga were here beside me, he said with apparent nonchalance.
This fucking faggot.
But to think he's going up there again, leaving me down here all by myself. The work feels much harder now. Shi Qingchuan finally noticed that something sounded weird, but he still didn't get it. With a face full of smiles, he said, Crimson Rainsod Flower, you're so funny. It sounds like you're saying you're gonna be lonely now that His Highness is gonna go back up to the heavens. Like you're newlyweds or something.
Dude.
You're not wrong, Shilian thought. Isn't that exactly what he meant? Shi Qingchuan laughed stiffly for a while, and Shilian finally couldn't bear it any longer. He cleared his throat. Lord Windmaster, will you step outside just for a moment, okay? Huh? Why? Shi Qingchuan asked. Shilian couldn't explain. Just step outside. We need to say our farewells. Only then did Shi Qingchuan exit, confused. Now it was just the two of them, inside the screen of light, not another soul present. Shilian turned around. Hua Cheng was still watching him with one eyebrow raised. He seemed to be waiting for him to say something, or do something. Thus Shilian gathered his courage, placed two stiff hands on Hua Cheng's shoulders, and steadied himself for a moment before he hopped up and pecked him on the cheek. After having done so, he looked around with a hollow conscience, like a thief, and only relaxed when he confirmed no one else was present. Yet unexpectedly the next second, he felt something tighten around his waist. It was Hua Cheng hugging him close. Gaga, are you just placating me? His unhappy tone was half serious, half fake. It was somewhat worrying to hear. Startled, Shilian quickly exclaimed, I'm not. Really? Hua Cheng said. But you weren't like this at all when you were borrowing spiritual power from me.
Wow,
Is this the sort of farewell I get?
Boy.
Shut up! Is this the sort of farewell I get now that I'm not lending you my power? Now that he thought about it, Shilian worried that he wasn't being sincere. In a small voice he said, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it like that. But after apologizing, the more he thought about it, the more it seemed that really was how he had come across. Alarms began to blare in his head. Scared he might be misunderstood, Shilian didn't wait for Hua Cheng's response. Without another word, he moved to act. He jumped up and hugged Hua Cheng around the neck, throwing himself on him. And this time, he fully kissed Hua Cheng, just where he wanted. As luck would have it, Shi Qingchuan chose just that moment to interrupt.
Oh my god.
Your Highness, I keep thinking about it, and the more I think, the weirder it feels. You two are just saying your farewells. There's no need to keep me.
Why are you here?
There's no need to kick me out, you know? I'm just... Your Highness?
No.
Why do you leave so fast? Shilian had fled the scene, fumbling and stumbling.
Oh my god.
Oh my god, I want to read the next one so bad. Please. Please.
Do it. I'm not
Yes! Let me drink.
done. My god.
This is...
This fucking guy.
this one's a lot. This one's a doozy.
Oh god.
Chapter 111. Evil enters the mirror, nowhere to hide.
God.
Even once he'd fumbled and stumbled onto the main avenue of the heavenly capital, Shilian was still covering half his face with his hand and was wobbly and unsteady on his feet. While none of the junior heavenly officials hurrying down the street dared approach him to ask about it, they all stared at him strangely nonetheless. Shilian quickly dropped his hand, straightened his back, and rubbed at his mouth unnaturally. My lips kind of hurt, he muttered. Don't know what's going on, ha ha. The looks the junior officials gave him became even stranger. What exactly did he do to make his lips hurt? They really did hurt a little. When he jumped up into that kiss, he'd used too much force. Hua Cheng most likely felt the impact as well, but Shilian very clearly felt him smile when he pressed close. He didn't dare to think more on the subject, just hurried onward with his head down. And the other heavenly officials didn't stop him, all rushing their own ways. Perhaps Mount Tonglu's opening had become too hectic an affair, as the air of the upper court was solemn and uneasy. There were already many heavenly officials gathered within the Palace of Divine Might. While the vengeful spirits of Mount Tonglu had been sent in all directions, the majority were sent to the most populous city, the royal capital. Shilian and Hua Cheng had toiled for so long because they chose the largest and most difficult task. Everyone else had only faced a few hundred of those creatures, and had long since finished them off. Pei Ming, Feng Xin, and the others were already back at the heavenly capital, their faces lined with fatigue. When Shilian crossed into the hall and looked up, the first one he came face to face with was Lan Chinchou, someone he hadn't seen in a long time. Lan Chinchou's face was gloomy. When he first saw Shilian, he was surprised. Then he promptly turned away. The silent crowd was lost deep in their own thoughts. Junwu was on the throne. He sat up a little when he saw Shilian arrive, ready to speak to him, but Lan Chinchou stepped forward before he could do so. "My lord, I heard you've already caught the green ghost Qirong." Junwu tipped his gaze to him. "That is correct. However, the green ghost Qirong, the ghost woman Xuanji, and the rest were not captured by my own hand. They were consigned to heaven's custody by Yin Yu of Ghost City." It was only then that Shilian noticed that Yin Yu was there. It couldn't be helped. Yin Yu really had no presence at all. Speaking of which, this was the first time Yin Yu had entered the Palace of Divine Might. No one but the highest-ranking heavenly officials could set foot in this hall without Junwu's permission. Yin Yu didn't have the right to enter when he was a heavenly official, because his rank was too low. But he could finally, formally, enter now that he had willingly fallen to Ghost City's ranks. Truly, it elicited conflicting feelings. Lan Chinchou cut right to the point. "Qirong is the villain who destroyed my clan. I pray my lord leaves him at my disposal." Junwu glanced at Shilian and deliberated for a moment. "It is not that handing him over to you would be a problem. However, I ask you this. Once you have dealt with the green ghost Qirong, what comes next? What will you do?" Before, Lan Chinchou had threatened that he would come looking for Shilian after he was done with Qirong. Junwu was well aware of this fact. Lan Chinchou's voice was hard. "That is not my lord's concern. My lord can't possibly plan on harboring Qirong just because I will not answer this question, and in doing so prevent me from avenging my family." In the past, Lan Chinchou rarely said anything within the Palace of Divine Might, and even when he did, it was always something silly. Yet now his words mirrored the consuming resentment in his expression and tone. It was not good for him to be in this state, and Pei Ming spoke up. "His Highness Tai Hua seems to have quite the temper today, eh? Of course my lord doesn't plan on acquitting." Just as he was trying to smooth things over, a commotion came from outside the hall and someone charged inside. "My lord, I can't wait any longer." It was Mu Cheng. He was dressed in all black, and his expression was grim as his clothing. Several martial officials trailed behind him. They were supposed to be responsible for apprehending him, but how could they possibly be capable of that feat? They could only rush inside with him. "My lord, we were just escorting General Xuanzhen to—" With one hand propping up his cheek, Junwu sighed. "I understand. Stand down." He gave a dismissive wave, then a moment later lifted his head and gazed at Mu Cheng. "And so?" "And so I cannot continue to endure these baseless accusations," Mu Cheng categorically proclaimed. "Hasn't my lord already captured that woman? I want to confront her face to face." Lan Chinchou spoke up as well. "My lord, please give me the green ghost Qirong." Neither was quiet with their demands, and they were causing quite a scene. It was clearly giving Junwu a headache. "Silence," he ordered. "Can neither of you wait until I've finished dealing with Mount Tonglu?" Who is speaking here? "If my lord needs to manage the vengeful spirits leaking from the kiln, then you need hands," Mu Cheng reasoned. "What's the use in keeping me locked up? Why not allow me a chance to clear my name, so I can return to my service in the upper court? The truth will come out as long as my lord brings her here and allows me to confront her. His words were logical, and he would likely be relentless if he wasn't given his way. And so Junwu could only command, "Bring in the ghost woman Jianlan." Soon Jianlan was brought forth. She carried a swaddled bundle that emitted chilling black qi in her arms. Something ghastly pale peeked out from the bundle and bared its teeth and claws before Jianlan stuffed it back inside. Here a part that somewhat resembled hand, there a part that somewhat resembled bones. The arresting officers hadn't restrained Jianlan, likely to save Feng Xin face. Feng Xin swallowed lightly, meeting her eyes for a moment. Jianlan looked away first. Feng Xin's gaze then fell on the bundle of swaddling clothes in her arms, and his expression grew even more complicated. Let me drink. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It's all coming to a head. On the other hand, Mu Qing's patience was already exhausted, and he began to speak the moment she arrived. "I don't know why your son must slander me, but it knows that I'm not to blame. It must be following someone's orders." He had basically lost his composure, but Shilian could understand. Mu Qing cared deeply about face, and having this slander hung over his head for so long had naturally made his temper overflow. This had gone on so far that it was even affecting his duty at the upper court. "And do you have a theory about who is controlling it?" Junwu questioned. Mu Qing didn't speak, but his eyes moved. Everyone could tell he was looking at Jianlan. The veins on Feng Xin's forehead pulsed. "What are you implying? Do you think she would make her son slander you on purpose?" Mu Qing withdrew his gaze. "I didn't say anything of the sort." "Then why were you looking at her?" Feng Xin exclaimed. "She bears no grudge against you, so why would she do such a thing?" Mu Qing glared at him. "There's certainly no grudge between me and her, but who knows about you?" "And what do you mean by that?" Feng Xin demanded. "Just spit it out all at once." Mu Qing glanced at Shilian before continuing to address Feng Xin. "You became acquainted with Lady Jianlan during the time of His Highness's first banishment, right?" The other officials followed suit and looked at Shilian, who was utterly flummoxed. How had he gotten dragged into this again? Feng Xin glanced at him too and growled a quiet response through his teeth. "What does that have to do with anything?" Mu Qing decided it was time to risk it all and ripped everything out into the open. "Everything, of course! At the time, life by His Highness's side was enormously difficult, and you hated me to the bone for returning to the middle court. You love dredging up old conflicts and berating me for my mistakes. And she was your bedmate, so how could she not hate me thanks to your subliminal influence? Who knows, maybe she started hating His Highness too, and in the end you never followed through with taking her away and instead chose your wretched loyalty. It was practically abandonment." "Enough of your bullshit!" Feng Xin roared, unable to bear another word. His fist flew out, and Mu Qing raised his own to return the blow. Jianlan went over to stop them, but the fetus spirit began to cackle strangely, sounding like the chaotic cries of an old crow, horrific to hear. Pei Ming and Yin Yu separated Feng Xin and Mu Qing and pulled them back, while Xuan Yizhen stayed on the sidelines staring. He seemed to be contemplating who would win if they'd continued their fight. In any case, it was a mess in the hall.
Murray.
What?
Or Maury. This is
Yeah,
Maury.
it is Maury. Yeah. Shilian stood there quietly for a long while, hanging his head. After a moment, he sighed. "My lord, the priority right now should be finding White No-Face and managing human face disease. The person we captured earlier is the most important piece of the puzzle." Junwu couldn't watch any longer either, and he waved his hand. "Take the ghost woman Jianlan and the fetus spirit away. Bring forth the state preceptor of Shenle." "No, I've got to see—" "What?" Mu Qing shouted. "Bring who?" Feng Xin cried, dumbfounded. They both looked to the hall's entrance, as a martial official escorted someone inside. Someone with whom they were very familiar. It was none other than Mei Nianqing, the state preceptor of Shenle. Feng Xin and Mu Qing were both flabbergasted. "State preceptor? It's really the state preceptor?" Feng Xin asked. Although Mu Qing didn't reply, he was equally stunned and uncertain. They couldn't be blamed. In truth, this still felt surreal to Shilian. He couldn't connect this man with the state preceptor who had once asked him a question about two men with a cup of water. Mei Nianqing slowly stepped forward, brushing past Shilian. Zhenwu remained seated upon his throne, overlooking the great hall. Shenle, you seemed to have something to say when we were down below. Shilian inclined his head slightly. Yes. Selecting the most important details, he gave a report of his journey to Mount Tonglu, and the incidents that occurred while exploring the kingdom of Wu Yang. The longer the crowd listened, the wider their eyes grew. Function and Muqing were positively floored. After Shilian finished his report, Zhenwu finally spoke. And yet I have never heard of the kingdom of Wu Yang. The other officials all agreed. I've never heard of it before either. It was 2,000 years ago, after all. Traces of it must have been wiped intentionally. Mei Nianqing hadn't spoken a single word throughout. Shilian turned to him. State Preceptor, the Crown Prince of Wu Yang is White No-Face. Am I correct? Yes, Mei Nianqing answered. He knew it. Then who left those murals behind? Wait, this is Pei Ming. Then who left those murals behind? And who destroyed the last painting? Pei Ming mused. I don't know who left the murals, Shilian responded, but I imagine the last painting was destroyed by White No-Face or his subordinates. After all, he didn't want anyone to discover his identity. He turned to Mei Nianqing. And you are the subordinate of the Crown Prince of Wu Yang, which made him a subordinate of White No-Face. Mei Nianqing didn't reply. Shilian had a sudden urge to ask him if he had known the strange creature was White No-Face back when Shenle fell. Had they been colluding? Had the state preceptor helped? However, he asked a different question in the end. Where is White No-Face now? Why did White No-Face want to bring ruin to Shenle? Shilian questioned. Why do you want to kill me? Shilian demanded. Mei Nianqing finally spoke. Your Highness, I don't want to kill you. Then why did you go for my throat down there? Shilian asked. If I strangled you, would you have died? Mei Nianqing asked back. Would the one beside you have let me succeed? That was true. But that didn't mean Mei Nianqing didn't have killing intent. His reaction at the time seemed subconscious. Mei Nianqing probably knew he couldn't convince Shilian, so he stopped trying to argue. After a moment of silence, Shilian finally asked the question he most wanted the answer to. What did you want to awaken in me? Zhenwu had told him the state preceptor seemed to want to awaken something within him. But what could that be? Mei Nianqing stared at him strangely. Inside his sleeve, Shilian's hands were clenched into fists. State preceptor, go ahead. Tell me. Shilian had been vaguely uneasy all this time. The Crown Prince of Wu Yang's fate was so similar to his own. Was there really a hidden link between him and White No-Face? He couldn't abide any sort of connection to a creature like that, but he was terrified that he'd discover he truly had one. Still, he had to know the truth. Mei Nianqing watched him, and a moment later he replied. Your Highness, it's not quite the right time for me to address the questions you've asked. You might not believe me even if I answered. After a pause, he continued. However, there is one thing I can tell you. He pronounced each word slowly and clearly. White No-Face is inside the Palace of Divine Might right now. He is standing before me. And who was standing before him? Shilian. Shilian instantly backed a few steps away, like he wanted to avoid standing in that spot. The closest person was Feng Shen, and he exclaimed, State Preceptor, you... Open your eyes and look properly at who's in front of you. It's His Highness, your disciple. However, other voices could be heard whispering from elsewhere in the room. The heavenly officials had begun to gossip amongst themselves. Could it be that His Highness, the White No-Face, share a split soul? What's a split soul? It's when a person's soul is split, broken into two pieces. Each half has its own memories, and their personalities and skills can be different too. Perhaps even their appearance. That's possible. I've heard cases like that too. If that's really true, what should we do? His Highness, The Crown Prince is the white-cloth calamity? So many voices filled the air, and even Shilian himself began to have doubts. Was he White No-Face? Was that really the truth? Was he the one who brought ruin to Shenle? Was he the one who had tortured himself for 800 years? Was he to blame for everything that had happened? The whispers in the hall were deafeningly loud, and the heavenly officials' faces were written with all manner of expressions. Even Feng Xin didn't know what to say anymore, or what to believe. As for Junwu, he stood up. Shenle, calm yourself. Shilian was falling apart. I... Had it all really been his fault? If it truly was, then what should he do? He didn't know. Just as he was drowning in confusion, a voice rang out in his mind. It's not possible. I can swear that you are you. You are no one else. Trust me. Sanlang. Hua Cheng had told him that this couldn't be. It could never be his fault. Shilian's mind instantly cleared. He steadied himself, finding his footing once more. Zhenwu, however, had already descended from his throne and come to his side. Shenle, calm down first. Let me drink.
This is literally just court. Like, why are we in court?
Yeah. Just as Shilian was about to look up and give a response, Mei Nancheng suddenly reached out and yanked the sword hung at Feng Xin's waist from its sheath. Brandishing it, he lunged at Junwu. All the heavenly officials cried out in alarm. However, Junwu and Shilian were both martial gods, the best in their field, no less. How could they be caught by such a low-level sneak attack? Shilian seized the shining blade between two fingers with lightning speed right in front of his face, before the point could even touch Junwu. Feng Xin regained his senses and rushed forward to restrain the state preceptor. He dared to attempt an assassination within the Palace of Divine Might, in front of so many martial gods. He was asking for death. State preceptor, this is pointless, Feng Xin exclaimed. As Mei Nancheng struggled in vain, he roared at Shilian. Look! Look quickly! Yin Yu rushed over. Your Highness, are you all right? What happened? Look at what? Muqing cried in alarm from further away. What does he mean? What is he up to? Shilian stood still at the center of the pandemonium. For a long time, he didn't move a muscle. It wasn't for the sake of the chaos around him, but because he had seen something reflected in that snow-white blade. A face. A man's composed, handsome face. And there were 3 other faces growing on it. The 3 smaller faces were squished onto the man's face, ruining his good looks and twisting them into something horrifying. They contorted the man's features. Half of his face appeared to be crying, while the other half appeared to be smiling. It was a face that should have been endlessly familiar to Shilian, and yet in the reflection of that mirror-like blade, it was so foreign it was terrifying. Shilian found himself drenched in cold sweat. Only then did he remember that the sword Feng Xin carried with him was Hongjing, the mirror that reveals evil. When evil entered that mirror, it could not hide. From this angle, it wasn't Shilian's face that Hongjing reflected, but the face of the one standing behind him. And upon that face was a pair of dark, solemn eyes that watched him closely. It was as if all his movements had slowed. Shilian's pupils shrank, his mouth opened, but before he could say a word, his arm went stiff. A powerful hand had seized his wrist. Behind him, Junwu was smiling. Shenle, what are you looking at? And there's an image. Daddy's home. Daddy's home.
Listen, it's so obvious.
Daddy's home.
Whoa, Daddy! Sorry. Hold myself together.
Oh God, I can't wait for the rest of this book, bro. I'm so excited.
He's such a freak.
Hold on, I forgot to put my fucking bookmark.
Daddy's home.
Daddy's home.
feel like if you're he's like already in white, like it's right there, you know.
I mean, white's like a common color.
Yeah, but who else wears it besides Shelly?
Mm.
E.
Should I do one more or should I stop?
Um, Up to you. How long is the next one?
It's like normal length.
I mean,
Let me
you
get a
do it
lozenge, and
tomorrow.
I want to keep going
Okay.
because I want to get to 114 because I read it and I almost cried, and I need you to experience it soon, or I'll
Oh
die.
my god.
Alrighty. Place your bets now. What do we think's gonna happen?
Oh no. I could not tell you.
Okay, this is chapter 112. Chaos in the upper court. Nefarious wave shakes the heavens. It had been centuries since Shilian last felt such chills down his spine. Mei Nianqing had declared that White No-Face was standing before him. He'd assumed his master was referring to him, but he failed to realize. Although Shilian was indeed standing in front of Mei Nianqing, Jinwu was standing behind Shilian. The only thing was, he had never suspected Jinwu in the slightest. The revelation startled him so badly that his hair stood on end. Shilian struggled a bit, but couldn't loosen Jinwu's powerful grip on him in the slightest. He said, in spite of himself, Your face. Jinwu seemed to pay no mind, sounding like he had just noticed a trifling mistake. Ah, a moment's carelessness, and they're out again. Another wave of excruciating pain coursed through Shilian's wrist, and he finally couldn't grip the sword anymore. His fingers went slack, and the long sword dropped to the ground with a clear, resounding clang. However, it was too late. Many of the nearby heavenly officials had seen the horrifying face reflected in Hong Jing just as Shilian had. A blanket of dead silence covered the great hall. Almost every heavenly official was stunned, including Feng Xin, who stood the closest and had seen everything clearly. Mei Nianqing used this chance to break free of his hold and grabbed Hong Jing from the ground, raising it with both hands to stand in front of Junwu. Everyone, look closely at the face of the man standing here. Some of the martial gods finally came to their senses. Brandishing his sword, Pei Ming rushed forward and shouted, Who are you? The heavenly officials, standing farther away, didn't understand what was happening, and they started calling out, What's going on? Who is General Pei talking to? How can he point a sword at the Emperor? Mei Nianqing glared unblinkingly at Jinwu. He enunciated each word as he stated, He is White No-Face. Mu Qing was dumbstruck. How could he be White No-Face? Is White No-Face impersonating the Emperor? Where's the real Emperor? That made Shilian wonder if there had been a clandestine switch at some point. But then how long was the supposed substitute been around? Why hadn't he noticed anything amiss? The Heavenly Emperor wasn't like the elusive low-key Earthmaster. An imposter couldn't have gone unnoticed by the entire upper court. Mei Nianqing was just about to speak again when Junwu raised his hand with a sigh. You've disappointed me again. Mei Nianqing's face abruptly dropped, and it seemed like he had been seized in a chokehold. Lan Chenchou picked up his greatsword and slashed out a flurry of gales, but he was sent flying backward with a single glancing look from Jinwu. In the next moment, Pei Ming, Lan Chenchou, Feng Xin, Mu Qing, Xuan Yizhen, and almost all the martial gods inside the Palace of Divine Might surged forward and surrounded and attacked Jinwu. An instant's time later, every one of those gods lay sprawled on the ground, defeated. Jinwu was still gripping Shilian's wrist. The floor of the great hall was littered with martial gods who had lost their spiritual powers. Only Jinwu and Shilian remained standing. Mu Qing hacked up a mouthful of blood and shouted angrily at Shilian, who stood frozen and silent in place. Move! Do something! What are you zoning out for? Are you waiting to be killed? But he didn't know. It wasn't that Shilian didn't want to move. It was that he couldn't move. Not a bit. Although Jinwoo was merely gripping him with a single hand, Shilian thought he would notice and immediately stop him, should he slightly curl a finger. Retaliation was completely out of the question. From whichever angle he judged, the best plan was to remain still and cautious. Such was the power of the number one martial god of all three realms. The heavenly officials standing at the room's outer edge had scattered in fear. It was a moment before they remembered to escape, and faces pale they attempted to rush out of the Palace of Divine Might. They only made it to the entrance before the heavy, glamorous doors closed on their own, leaving the officials to slap at them futilely. The nearly 100 heavenly officials inside the hall either couldn't get out or couldn't get up. Pure chaos reigned. An unseen force yanked Mei Nianqing's body forward, and Junwoo grabbed a hold of his collar, smiling as he did. Did you think I didn't have a plan if you changed your mind last minute and opened your mouth in front of everyone? Did you think they would pose a threat to me once they knew and joined forces? I could annihilate them all with a single hand. It seemed that Jinwoo hadn't brought Mei Nianqing up first, just to give Shilian a chance to say goodbye to Hua Cheng. He had threatened Mei Nianqing with something, which is why the state preceptor had allowed himself to be interrogated in the hall, without resistance or complaint. Who could have guessed that he would change his mind at the last second? He clutched Jinwoo's sleeves and shouted to Shilian, "Your Highness! Run away! He's gone mad!" "State preceptor!" Shilian exclaimed. A moment later, Mei Nianqing couldn't speak another word. It was as if something was choking him. But he was always dressed in robes that covered his neck, so Shilian couldn't clearly see what was wrong. "You silly fool," Jinwoo sighed. That was no different from throwing them into the pit of fire. This affair had nothing to do with them. But now no one will leave the heavenly capital alive. With things this dire, Shilian called into the spiritual communication array. "Sun Long!" He had never recited Hua Cheng's verbal password to access his private communication array before, but he didn't have time to worry about being shy in such dangerous circumstances. And yet, even after reciting it a few times, he received no response. There was nothing but silence on the other end. Just as it had been in Mount Tonglu's domain, spiritual communication was blocked. With only a glance, Jinwoo could tell what he was thinking. No need to keep trying. You cannot reach him if I do not allow it. The heavenly capital was built on Jinwoo's power. This was his domain, and he reigned supreme within it. Of course he could do whatever he wanted here, which also meant the entire upper court, indeed, the entire heavenly capital, had become thoroughly isolated. Truly, they were now crying for the heavens in vain, crying for the earth with no avail. Which is an idiom. Someone's in a hopeless situation. Suddenly, the doors of the Palace of Divine Might burst open. The heavenly officials regained their spirit and were about to rejoice, but they were shocked again when they saw who was standing in the entrance. A tall, black-clad man stood outside the hall, blocking everyone's way out. His aura was chilling and unapproachable. It was Ling Wen, wearing the brocade immortal. The heavenly officials had no idea what to do as Ling Wen crossed the threshold and entered the hall, bending one knee to the ground before Jinwoo. "My lord," he said with solemn respect. "Rise and get to your work. You know what to do," Jinwoo ordered. Ling Wen inclined his head and smiled. "Of course." Mu Qing struggled to his feet, using the wall as support, both shocked and dubious upon seeing this display. Wasn't Ling Wen still at large at Mount Tonglu territory? "That is correct," Jinwoo replied. "However, Ling Wen is very useful. Much more useful than most heavenly officials. She is a rare talent. Her actions were nothing but an insignificant mistake, so I have summoned her back." Indeed, Ling Wen's mistake in creating the brocade immortal was truly insignificant compared to what the white cloth calamity had done. And now both Ling Wen and the brocade immortal were Jinwoo's subordinates. A small white shadow leapt forward in a flash and latched onto Jinwoo's boot, then started nuzzling his boot. Shunwu's foot, then started nuzzling his boot. When he recognized it, Feng Xin cried angrily, "What are you doing? Get back here!" That thing was the fetus spirit. Not only did it
Oh, his baby.
That's his baby. Not only did it disobey the words of its own father, but it even maliciously snaked its tongue at him. Feng Xin had just been beaten to the ground by Junwu, spewing blood, and now his own son was hugging the leg of the enemy who had wounded him, like it had no idea who its dad was. He was so furious. He was so furious that he could puke up blood again. A troop of expressionless martial gods poured into the hall soon after. They were officials Junwu had personally appointed, and they only obeyed his command. Lingwen received control of them from Junwu and gave them their orders. Escort all of the heavenly officials to their palaces and monitor them. Pei Ming was sitting nearby, his expression complicated. Lingwen, how heartless of you. Lingwen patted his shoulder. You've known of my heartlessness since the day we met. How about it? Want to join us? You're always welcome. Pei Ming gave a dry chuckle, but didn't reply. Once again, Shilian received special treatment. Junwu would personally escort him back to the palace of Shenle. Come, Junwu beckoned. Shilian glanced back at Mei Yanqing. Just what is going on? Who are you? What did you want to achieve? Who is this person? Is he Junwu or White No-Face? What is he planning? There were far too many questions he wanted to ask, but the answers would need to be given in great detail and in private. Only Mei Yanqing could provide the information, but Junwu would hardly give him the chance. The moment they left the Palace of Divine Might, Shilian was shocked. Nefarious clouds rolled across the gloomy skies above the great avenue of the heavenly capital. All had changed in the blink of an eye, and the once scintillating brightness was no more. Only the martial guard, under Junwu's direct command, still acted as they usually did, as they escorted every heavenly official back to their palaces. There was a choking aura of somber unease. The junior officials who had been rushing about were now sprawled unconscious across the ground. Needless to say, this had to be Junwu's doing. From afar the bell tolled again and again. Dong, dong, seemed to be the source of the problem here. They walked slowly across the great avenue of the heavenly capital towards the palace of Shenle. On the way, Shilian racked his brain, trying to think of a way to escape. But he was no match for Junwu, and any clever tricks he could think of would be completely useless against the Emperor. Besides, Junwu didn't just have martial might. He could always see through Shilian and understand exactly what he was thinking. By the time they entered the palace of Shenle, Shilian still hadn't come up with anything, and he told himself to let it go. It didn't matter if he couldn't think of anything. If he didn't contact Huacheng, he'd definitely notice that something was amiss soon, as long as things didn't get out of hand before that happened. However, as soon as the doors shut, Junwu suddenly asked, "Are you thinking about Crimson Rain-Sought Flower?" Junwu's words made Shilian's pounding heart jump to his throat, and he didn't know how to respond. If he said yes, would Junwu do something to Huacheng? But Junwu might not believe him if he said no. At his lack of a response, Junwu smiled. "No need to fret. I know you must. I'm sure you really want to talk to him." The way he spoke to Shilian was the same as it had ever been. Warm, tolerant, composed, dependable. There was no change. But the more he acted like this, the more confused and terrified Shilian became. "If you really miss him, then why not connect with him for a bit, to chat?" Junwu continued. He had guessed what Shilian was thinking when they entered the palace. Everything was within his grasp. Junwu's smile remained unchanged. "Shenle, you know what to say to him. Do not let him worry. And I'm sure that Crimson Rain-Sought Flower of yours will be very happy you took the initiative to reach out to him." Then he placed a hand on Shilian's shoulder. Shilian felt a subtle wave of movement, and he knew Junwoo had cast some sort of spell that allowed him to hear every word said in their communication array. Even if Junwoo couldn't speak directly, he could still listen in, and Shilian already knew that what he wanted to hear him say to Hua Cheng. After a pause, Shilian gathered his courage and boldly said Hua Cheng's verbal password out loud. Junwoo seemed to find it funny. He even chuckled a bit. Remember, his verbal password is something like dirty. We'd never get to know what it is. However, Shilian had no time to be embarrassed or shy. It only took a moment for Hua Cheng's voice to ring out next to Shilian's ears. "Gaga, Gaga," he sighed. "It's been so long. You finally remembered San Lang." Shilian exchanged a look with Junwoo. "San Lang, it hasn't even been 2 hours since I left." "To me, the point is that you left, not that you've only been gone for 2 hours," Hua Cheng said. Even
This guy. Woo!
Even for an instant, separation is separation. Junwoo was listening in right next to him, you know. Even taking his perilous circumstances into account, Shilian was still managed to feel some genuine embarrassment. "Unfortunately, he will have to wait longer than 2 hours," Junwoo said. "Continue. Tell him that he will not be able to see you until the vengeful spirits have been taken care of. Do not attempt to give any roundabout hints. I can hear everything." It would take 7 days and 7 nights to dispose of the vengeful spirits. After a pause, Shilian said, "If you can't even wait for 2 hours, what will you do if I need to be away for longer?" "Did Junwoo stuff a big bunch of missions in your arms?" Hua Cheng asked. "Yeah," Shilian replied. "Let me help," Hua Cheng said. "Tell him that I will permit you to take a 3-year break after you complete your missions," Junwoo directed. "There's no need," Shilian said. "San Lang, you've already been a great help guarding the array for me. Just let me handle everything else. The Emperor already said that I can have a 3-year break after I complete the missions. I won't have to do anything else." "Only 3 years?" Hua Cheng asked. "Is 3 years not enough?" Shilian said. "It's already a perk." "All right, fine, but," Hua Cheng continued languidly, "Gaga, that's your perk. What about mine?" What perk?" Shilian asked. "What do you think?" Hua Cheng asked back. When Hua Cheng asked that question, Shilian could practically see his quirked brow and curved lips. What could he possibly say to that? "Speaking of which, Gaga still owes me quite a bit of spiritual power, am I wrong?" Hua Cheng continued. "No," Shilian replied cautiously.
He's trying to sext so bad.
"Then has Gaga thought of how he'll repay me?" Hua Cheng asked. "Not really," Shilian said. Hua Cheng huffed a laugh. "Since you haven't thought of anything, then why don't you let me decide? Once everything is over and done with, and you're on your vacation, Gaga can take his time to pay me back. How's that sound?" Shilian was forced to defend against his attacks while sneaking glimpses at Junwoo like a guilty thief. He answered with random affirming noises. "Oh, yeah." Having slyly guided him to this point step by step and receiving the answer he wanted to hear, Hua Cheng was finally satisfied and temporarily let him off the hook. "So, what can I do for you? It's so rare for Gaga to seek me out through spiritual communication." Junwoo eyed Shilian. The reason he had allowed him to communicate with Hua Cheng was to keep the Ghost King out of this, to make him think everything was fine, and get him to stay obediently in the mortal realm. Shilian knew what kind of answer Junwoo wanted to hear, so he replied slowly. "Actually, it's not really anything. I was just afraid that you'd be worried after I'd been gone for so long." Hua Cheng wondered. "Didn't Gaga say it yourself? You haven't even been gone for 2 hours. Why would you worry that I'd be worried?" Shilian was getting dizzy from going around in circles with him. He felt a little anxious, but also a little amused. Suddenly, Hua Cheng said, "Oh, I get it." Shilian's breath hitched. "What do you get?" Hua Cheng seemed to chuckle on the other end. A moment later, he replied leisurely, "Gaga, maybe you're the one who's missing me so keenly after being apart for such a short while." Even if Shillian managed to cover up their feelings with ambiguity earlier, this line was too honest and exposed, and he couldn't pretend to reply casually. Under Junwoo's watchful gaze, Shillian's face grew hot. A moment later, he replied softly, "Yeah?" Hua Chung's reply was soft as well. "Me too. I really want to go up there right now and whisk you away." Since Shillian's heart was warmed by this, it also felt like it was suspended in the air. His eyes met Junwoo's. If Hua Chung really did come to the heavenly capital, how would things end? How would Junwoo handle him? Shillian suppressed his emotions and did his best to sound natural. "Nah, it's okay. It's a mess up here in the heavens right now. If you come, they'll probably lose their heads. Just wait a bit longer." "I understand, Gaga. I won't show up and scare them," Hua Chung replied lazily. "I hate that glaring light in the heavenly capital, and I still have to watch over this circle of people. I'll just wait here nicely for Gaga to come back." Shillian couldn't tell if he had sighed in relief or broken out in a cold sweat. "Yes, be good." "But," Hua Chung said, "if I'm going to be good, Gaga can't come back empty-handed. I need a reward." Of course," Shillian replied. The two exchanged a few more casual words, ambiguous and questionable, unable to part. They bade each other farewell repeatedly before finally ending the
Oh
communication.
my god.
"No, you hang up. No, you hang up."
Literally, these
Shillian softly huffed a
douchebags.
breath, and Junwoo commented, "It seems Shenle has been living an exciting life down below."
Fucking getting his ass.
Shillian didn't know how to answer
It's
that.
so funny.
Junwoo patted Shillian's shoulder, then turned around. He was about to leave the palace of Shenle when Shillian called to him. "My lord!" Junwoo paused in his step. "Who exactly are you? Are you the Emperor? Or something else?" Shillian asked. He'd struggled to accept it when he suspected a connection between the state preceptor and White No-Face. If Junwoo and White No-Face were connected, his whole world would flip upside down. After all, Junwoo was the #1 martial god of the Three Realms. Someone he
Hold on, my
respected.
dad's calling.
Oh my god. Kill.
Hello? Happy Father's Day. Yeah. Good. Yeah. That's fine. Oh, really? Oh. Yeah, that's good. Okay. When did you guys leave? When did you guys leave? Yeah. No, I meant leave from, yeah, today. Oh. Alright, was it good? How was that? Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah, that's true. That's good. There you go. Yeah. I mean, they don't know how to control their emotions yet, so like me, I know I control my emotions pretty well, I think. Oh, well, I didn't. That's up to you then. I guess that was true. But okay. All right, I'll keep in touch for this week to hang out and everything. All right, cool. Yeah. Yeah, good luck. All right. Love you too. Bye.
Hello. I forgot it
Hello.
was Father's Day.
Yeah, it was Father's Day. My dad also said Happy Father's Day to me, but
Because
he
you're
also
daddy.
said, "Why did you say that?"
Not to him, but in general.
Um, he also said Happy Day to me, like on Mother's Day. So I was like, I don't think that's right.
I don't think that's how that works.
Yeah, he doesn't.
He says
You
happy
think?
birthday to everyone on his birthday.
No, he said it because I have a cat.
Well, that's okay.
That's why.
He
Um,
realized his mistake and he was like, I'm gonna correct it today.
I'm gonna correct it by saying Happy Father's Day, which is hilarious. But
Okay,
yeah,
let me continue.
yes,
It's about to get
please.
funny again. He'd
God.
struggled to accept it when he suspected a connection between the state preceptor and White No Face. If Jun Wu and White No Face were connected, his whole world would flip upside down. After all, Jun Wu was the #1 martial god of the Three Realms, someone he respected and looked up to. Jun Wu didn't answer him, just continued on his way. Now that Chilean was left to his own devices, he brainstormed plans for retaliation as he dragged his exhausted body to the inner chambers of the Palace of Shenle. Although this palace had become a cage, it was a big, magnificent cage. There was even a bathing pool made of white jade in the inner hall. Over the last few days, Chilean had battled the white ghost, entered the kiln, crawled, tumbled, rolled, and fought. He was exhausted in both body and mind. He decided that he might as well take a bath to refresh himself. He wouldn't be going anywhere for a while anyway. He stripped down and lowered himself into the warm water to soak. Chilean leaned against the edge of the white jade pool, folding his clothes absent-mindedly. Two tiny things came tumbling out of his pile of robes, clacking crisply as they did. Chilean looked closely and saw that they were two cute, exquisite little dice. He picked up the dice and held them in his palm, remembering the words Hua Cheng had said to him. If you want to see me, it won't matter what you roll. I will appear. It was unusual that he was the one who initiated their spiritual communication, and perhaps Hua Cheng had noticed. But even if he realized something was wrong, he wouldn't be able to get here. The heavenly capital was now isolated from the world, and completely under Junwu's control. Chilean was fully aware of the reality of the situation. He knew he wouldn't get to see Hua Cheng, even if he rolled 2 sixes. But he still tried. Clack, clack. The dice tumbled over the jade tiles on the edge of the bathing pool. Snake eyes. His luck was terrible as always. And sure enough, there was not a single hint of movement. Chilean sighed and turned around. He was just about to dunk his face and body into the water when he heard a voice. Guga? Water splashed everywhere as Chilean abruptly stood up in the bath. Sandang? Had he actually summoned Hua Cheng? However, when he scanned his surroundings, he didn't see anyone's shadow. Still, that voice was definitely not a hopeful hallucination. Chilean's heart thumped when he heard another voice call out, Your Highness! Only then did Chilean realize that the voice had come from his own mouth. It was his voice, but the sound had been obscured by the spacious bathing room's humid air and the noise of splashing water. Chilean was stunned for a moment, but then it dawned on him. The soul-shifting spell. Lord Windmaster? He cried in surprise and delight. From his lips came another person's overly excited words. Yes, it's me. Ha ha ha. Amazing, right? The Windmaster. No, I have spiritual powers again. It was previously mentioned that the soul-shifting spell didn't see frequent use due to its exhaustive demands on spiritual power. Because it was much rarer and sketchier than typical spiritual communication spells, a random barrier was unlikely to deliberately block it. When Shi Jingquan lost his spiritual powers, the door that connected him to Shilian had been blocked from one side. Shilian hadn't imagined that door would see use now. Jingquan, the soul-shifting spell burns a lot of spiritual power. Where did you get it? Shilian asked, though he quickly realized the answer. Where else could he have gotten it? Sure enough, Shi Jingquan replied, It's a long story. Well, it's not actually that long. That crimson rainsaw flower of yours gave me a few black candies to eat. They're incredibly magical. I got an explosion of power after I ate them. Even though it's temporary, it'll still last for a while. Communication won't be a problem, but they taste really bad. Blech, blech, blech. Shilian couldn't help but recall the ghost scent candy that Pei Ming had eaten, but any spiritual power candies Hua Cheng provided would be high-end. Who called me Gaga just now? Shilian asked. It was me, Shi Jingquan said. Shilian didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Why did you call me that? And here I thought... I know, Shi Jingquan said. You thought it was Crimson Rainsaw Flower coming for you, right? Shilian cleared his throat lightly, and Shi Jingquan continued. He was the one who told me to call you that. He said that you'd know he was here if I did, and it'd be comforting for you. That was true, Shilian supposed. Although he had been surprised when he heard Gaga, it had been very reassuring. Is he next to you right now? Shilian asked. Is everything all right in the royal capital? The vengeful spirits aren't giving you trouble, are they? Everything's fine here, Shi Jingquan said. The vengeful spirits are still being cleared out. It's just that, when you were having the conversation with Crimson Rainsaw Flower earlier, he was happily laughing and talking with you about random stuff, then, as soon as the communication ended, his face turned so dark it was terrifying. And then he called me over to see if I could shift my soul to you. Oh yeah, by the way, Your Highness, he wants me to pass on this message. Your Highness, please get dressed. He's been nagging me about that for a while now. What's the problem? It's not like you'll catch a cold in the heavens. Shilian nearly fainted, and he grabbed a robe to wrap himself at the speed of lightning. Sun Lung could see? Yeah, Shi Jingquan replied. It's pretty annoying to keep repeating things, so I've just been transmitting everything I see and hear right to him. That way, he knows everything you do or say. He just can't talk to you. God. He just can't talk to you or control your body directly, that's all. Dear Lord Windmaster, how clueless can you be? Had Shilian known he wouldn't have gotten into the bath, he'd assumed that he would have to think a while longer before an opportunity presented itself. It's fine, Your Highness, Shi Jingquan said. I didn't think you'd care so much about something like this. We're all men here. Surely you've seen Hua Chengji like that before. Besides, I didn't see much. He really was too clueless. Shilian slapped a hand to his forehead and quickly got dressed, then abruptly changed the subject as he grabbed the dice and left the inner hall. Sanlang, how did you figure out something was wrong? After a pause, Shi Jingquan replied, Crimson Rainsaw Flower says he knew the moment you sought him out. Oh, Hua Chengzhu wants me to tell you this. Gaga's so shy, I knew he wouldn't recite my verbal password if it wasn't something major. Just as he'd thought. Shi Jingquan seemed to be talking to Hua Cheng. Okay, I won't waste any more time on nonsense. We'll talk business. Then he said, Your Highness, what exactly is the situation over there? Is the Emperor not around? Shilian didn't know where to start. It's precisely because he's around that things are like this. By the time Shilian had explained the key points, Shi Jingquan was already shaken. My God! Your Highness, you're not delirious, are you? It's the Emperor! We're talking about the Emperor here! I can't be sure if it really is him anymore, Shilian said. Sunlong, what do you make of all of this? A moment later, Shi Jingquan replied, Crimson Rainsaw Flower doesn't seem very shocked. He just said, Not surprised at all. I already couldn't stand him. For lack of anything to say to that, Shilian laughed. Can you stand anyone? That question was directed to Hua Cheng, and Shi Jingquan replied, He says, other than you, no. Hey, Hua Chengzhu, that's not nice. I'm standing right here, you know. So you can't stand me either. What's wrong with me? All right. It was just a joke. In any case, the martial gods have all been beaten into submission, and every heavenly official is confined to their palace. The heavenly capital is isolated from the world right now, so there's no way to get in. Crimson Rainsaw Flower says there is a way in, but we'll need to enlist someone's help. Shi Jingquan stated. Who? Shilian asked, but a moment later he shouted, Who's there? The latter question wasn't directed at Hua Cheng or Shi Jingquan. It was voiced at an unusual movement behind him. Someone had come. And that's the end. And that's next is 113, and then it's 114, and you and me will experience that together.
What am I supposed to experience it alone?
I was gonna say you'll cry, but you won't. But it'll be sad. It'll be sad. It'll be sad.
I'm